ready?
I am.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Fall Speaker Series at the Peacedale Museum of Art and Culture. This series was curated by fellow trustee Karen Ellsworth, who's right here, and also a favor of our newsletter if you haven't picked one up. Jim is our second speaker for the fall series. I'm Lisa Fiore, president of the Board of Trustees, and just thinking back, the first time I ventured into the gallery was 60 years ago. I was a kid in Peacedale in the Oaks, and my sisters and I went to the library to get a key, and then we were able to come over here. And I'm still here. But this year, we're celebrating our 133rd anniversary as a historic treasure in the village of Peacedale. Now, tonight's speaker, Jim Crothers, who's also a friend, was a former Southeastern High School teacher, which I think some of you were his students, a URI professor, and former director of South County Museum. One of Jim's passions is researching history and sharing it. So tonight, Jim will bring to light the Narragansett Gilded Age. Take it away, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. I would like to thank Donna Grady. Where'd you go? There she is. She helped me with the PowerPoint, getting the, I provided the images, but it's been so long since I was at the museum, nothing worked. It's basically what it was. So Donna stepped in and helped me with that, and then the staff at the Narragansett Library are the most generous people with their knowledge and skills. They are absolutely great. So if you have a research project that has anything to do with Narragansett, just ask at the main desk. They take you upstairs, they unlock all the cabinets, they sort of point out where things are. There's a copier, and then they say, bye. They were fabulous. So they really, really, really were fabulous. But thanks to them and Donna, and for the invitation from Lisa and the rest of the board of directors for the museum. If we look at the title for tonight's talk, does anybody know where this, or if you watch television, all right, I see people shaking their heads already. Does anybody know where the title Gilded Age came from? Yes?
Newport.
No.
Well, they're doing a series on it.
I know they are, and they're advertising it as the Gilded Age. Where do we get that title?
Mark Twain. Mark Twain.
Ooh, where are you? Who said that? How did you know that it was Mark Twain who came up with the title?
Former English teacher.
Former English teacher. Right on, sister. Exactly. The Gilded Age was published in 1873 by Mark Twain and a fellow by the name of Charles Warner. And they satirized the greed and corruption that was in Washington, D.C. in particular, in the period following the Civil War. And now it is morphed into a phrase that means the upper set, whatever. How many of you have been to, let's say, the Breakers over in Newport? Right. Where was a similar mansion in Narragansett? It ain't there anymore.
Somewhere in Ocean Road.
Similar, it has to be bigger than Ocean Road.
At the museum.
At South County Museum, at Cananchett. William Sprague, former governor, U.S. senator, built a 65-room mansion up on the hill. He owned everything from where the Dunes Club is now, all the way down to where South Pier Road comes in, and then all the way back almost to Silver Lake.
Oh, wow.
So he had the big bucks. But we'll talk about him later on. But the 1%, Twain dealt with the likes of the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts. Well, a lot of the names that will come through tonight you may not recognize as Narragansett residents, but they were. And to give you a time frame to work within, we start with Ulysses S. Grant. So where are we approximately?
1870s.
Okay, that's close enough, all right? And then we take it up to Teddy Roosevelt. All right, so that's going to be our span. We're not going to go back to the colonial planters that were here, that type of thing, if you're familiar with those. And we're not going to move too much beyond when Narragansett became an independent community rather than a village of South Kingstown. But it was a village in South Kingstown. We're looking at the 1830s to the 1840s. It wasn't until, does anybody know when Narragansett became an independent town rather than a village? It wasn't Peacedale. It wasn't Rocky Brook. Those are all villages. Anybody know?
80s?
1900. 1900 was when they first separated off. And guess who was the president of the first town council?
Sprague.
William Sprague, exactly. William Sprague, who owned all of that property that was down there. But at that particular time period, life revolved around farming and shipping. Point Judith Light was established or built in 1816. Farmers and merchants needed a way to get their produce and their goods away from Narragansett, and also they needed a way to get goods from other parts of the United States, particularly the southern parts, including the Caribbean. Who's ever heard of the Narragansett Pacer? Anybody? What do you know about Narragansett Pacer?
Well, we live at Shadow Farm, and they bred.
Really? Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they bred Narragansett Pacers.
But what is a Narragansett Pacer? It's a horse.
Designed
Been
for
nice.
durability and.
It's got a nice little trot. Yep. Speedy. All right.
In theory, George Washington had one. But
And in theory, and not really theory,
Oh, he did.
that guy up in Boston, Silversmith,
right.
he supposedly was on a Narragansett Pacer. Small, sturdy, little horse. And guess who else had one? If you've been watching Ken Burns this week, you'd know. George the W. Big George W. had Narragansett Pacers at Mount Vernon. So how do you get them down there? That's what you do when you get there with them. How do you get them there? By boat. By boat. And so that's where we're going with the concept of transporting and the idea of piers. Now, where is the North Pier, or where was the North Pier? Because that's where everything got shipped from for a long, long time. Thank you. North Pier?
Narragansett Beach, in front of the cabanas.
Almost. All right. Coast Guard House?
Okay.
All right. It wasn't there then, but that's where the North Pier was. And it wasn't called the North Pier, it was called Narragansett Pier, because there wasn't a second pier at that particular point in time. But what's going on there is that most of the owners of the piers, north and south, were tied in with the Robinson and the Hazard families, and we're right in their domain right here. The Hazards needed to get kersey cloth from their mills right over here down to the Carolinas. How come? Slaves, all right? when you drive up Kersey Lane or Kersey Road, think about that. It's named after a cloth that was used by plantation owners in the South to clothe their slaves. In addition, there were other mills in Peacedale, but the only way to ship anything from here was by boat, by schooner. So what was down at the pier? Now again, there's only one right now, located about where the Coast Guard house is. Push things up a little bit. Okay. We're going to come back to this one in just a second. But what we are going to be looking at is the concept of the pier. You with me now? Is there anybody who's unfamiliar with this illustration?
I never saw it before.
What's that?
I never saw it before.
Oh, well, but I mean, do you know where we are?
Yes.
Okay, here's what we call the towers. Well, those weren't there. This little life-saving station wasn't there. None of this was here. It was just a pier that extended out where the farmers and the manufacturers could bring their goods, put them on schooners. In fact, they actually owned a lot of the boats themselves to take them south and then bring goods back up from the south. Well, let's take a look at our piers. This is North Pier. Now, these don't really tell the best story because they're in the early ages of photography. So what you see here, you can see a couple of sailing schooners that are in the background. And then the North Pier, if you walked out of the Coast Guard house tonight, you would hit that pier and it would take you right out. All right? And so that's where the Hazards and the Robinsons families had their own coastal schooners. There were shops nearby. Let's go down the street a little bit. South Pier. South Pier Road. Anybody driven on South Pier Road? Sure you have. Sure you have. If you've driven down South Pier Road, what was the hotel bar that was on the corner in the 1960s? My favorite place. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. But what was there? Well, there were small shops. Again, it's not a village per se. Small shops. There was a planing mill for rough sawn lumber. There was a steam grist mill that was located down here at South Pier. And how many of you are familiar with the road that goes out from Monahan's Dock out to the... Most everybody familiar with it? If you're not, let me know and I'll try to explain it a little better. With me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So there was a nursery. The Buttonwood Nursery was located on the site of what is now Celeste Restaurant. All right. See where they got written up this week in the paper? Big stamp of approval for Celeste. There was a blacksmith shop. There was an iron foundry for manufacturing iron stoves. And the same shop advertised axe handles and ox bows for sale. Not very commercially oriented per se, except for the people who had these schooners and were along here. But the only way to get around was to walk or by horse/carriage. And it probably wouldn't be an Narragansett Pacer. They were too expensive. But what happens is things start to change. And I'm going to leave us on the Monahan's Pier there. With the installation of railroad tracks that linked New York, Providence, and Boston. We're talking approximately 1837. So we're 25, 30 years before the Civil War. Davy Crockett. How many of you watched Davy Crockett on TV? I see lots of heads. Well, the railroad comes in 1837. Davy Crockett died in the Battle of the Alamo in 1836. So that's where we are time frame wise. But you couldn't get down here by train. You could come in to Kingston on the train up there, what we would call New Haven Railroad type of thing. And you could get off there and you could catch a stagecoach to the pier. That would be how you would get there. And that stagecoach ride, I don't know who calculated these things out. It took 2.5 hours by stagecoach to get from the Kingston Railroad Station down to Narragansett Pier. So there wasn't too much commercial traffic running around there. We find that Adamore Robinson, up in this neighborhood, built the first bathhouse on the beach. And let me back up to the beach here. All right, so Narragansett Beach is there. Does anybody know what this building is? We're going to talk about it a little later. The big baby? That's right. Yes, you got it. Rockingham. All right, we'll talk about the Rockingham Hotel. This building right here, that's the casino, right? We'll talk about that. And then the casino connects to the towers, and we'll talk about that. And this is the first Coast Guard house. Now, when this photograph was taken, I do not know. But I know that it had to be before 1900, and we'll find out why in a bit. But Adamore Robinson built the first bathhouse on the beach, and they owned Canonchit, which is where South County Museum is, which included the beach. And this is about the same time that the whale ship Morgan, that's down at Mystic Seaport, that's about the same time that that was commissioned and put into the water. So it gives us an idea what's going on there. Locals and visitors started to come to this area. And Benjamin Hadwin started taking in boarders. It was at the Gladstone Hotel, which is across from the Narragansett Library. But 1848 is our key date. It's the key date. Joseph Dulles of Philadelphia, who owned a large cotton plantation in South Carolina, visited our buddy Roland Hazard. Is that all right if I call him my buddy? Okay. Roland Hazard up here in Peacedale. Dulles was a very good customer of Hazard's, purchasing large quantities of kersey or slave cloth. Hazard gives Dulles a carriage ride around all the many villages. So we went up to West Kingston, and then we went here, there. But the last stop on the way was the pier. Because remember, it was a village of South Kingstown. And Dulles was smitten. He could not believe what he was seeing. The beach was wonderful. And so he had Hazard take him over to Hadwin's hotel, if you want to call that, and he rented the entire hotel for the following summer so he could bring his family up. All right, that's pretty hefty duty. Boarders were taken at the Southern Hotel, which becomes the site of, what's our favorite place? The Green Inn. All right. Is there anybody who does not know where the Green Inn was? Okay, I'm sorry. It was a great spot. Monahan's Dock, you with me? The wellscape that's on the middle of the road. Well, Green Inn is not there, but just go to about 11 o'clock, and that's where the Green Inn was, right there. Just north of the watering trough. So what we have is a little break in the action. We've got some transportation that we've solved some of it a little bit, but we've got this thing called the Civil War, which got in the way of what was going on. So let's go down. North Pier, pretty nasty stuff. I can't imagine trying to get my goods or my horses aboard or off there. And South Pier, this was taken quite a bit later, but you can see the pier part. Oh, the pier part is jutting out from in there. And we're looking up towards the towers. And then we have a whole string of hotels that we'll be talking about in just a minute. But here's the biggie, the big biggie. In 1876, the Hazard family built the Pier Railroad with round-trip service from Kingston to the South Pier. So no more 2.5-hour trips on a stagecoach from West Kingston down to Narragansett. South Pier is also called, anybody?
Pier 5. Pier 5?
I still can't hear you.
Pier 5. Pier
Pier
5.
five.
Yeah, I heard that. I'm sorry. I've never heard it called that. That's why I read it. South Pier, Monahan's, Tucker's, but I've never heard Pier 5. Where does that come from?
I don't know. That's just how we've known it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's perfectly all right. But what we have is the railroad coming right down. Whoops, too far. Right down into this neighborhood right here. So you can just get off there. So that worked out pretty well. The station was moved to Boone Street. Anybody have any idea where the station was on Boone Street?
Street Market. Yeah, the Boone Street Market.
Right, exactly.
It's like,
Across from Crazy Burger, which is for sale, by the way, if you want to buy the business. I saw that in the paper this morning. But that provided much better access to the hotels. So you've got the railroad now running north and south from New York to Boston. People are coming this way, and then they come east right down to the center of what we would call. You could come from New York or Providence and head to Kingston to the pier without changing cars or transferring your baggage. There were 10 trains each day, each way. So that was pretty impressive. And in addition to the trains, the steamship Caswell made 4 round trips from Newport to the pier and provided connections from Newport to New York City 3 times a day. So we're making the pier accessible to anybody who wanted to come, even from as far as New York City. The trip from the pier, or actually from Newport, was 5 hours and 15 minutes to New York City. You can't drive it for that anymore, right? Can't drive it for that. The first life-saving station, which is the precursor to the Coast Guard House, was built at the north end of the beach, approximately where the Dunes Club is now located. That's where the first life-saving station was. And the stone Coast Guard House that we're familiar with was built in 1888. So we've got this whole stretch of hotels that work their way down and along South Pier. So what's going to happen is we are going to go to this building. We call it the Towers. What's it good for? Partying? Not much when you think about it. All right? And when it was constructed, you can see people here, there were no windows, no glass windows. It was just open, all right? You could hobnob up there if you wanted to. So if you came up from New York and you had a friend coming down from Boston, you'd say, meet us at the tower, and you would go up and you could hobnob around up there. But in this particular case, we've got other things going on. Unfortunately, the title blocks out a carriage that's coming down here, but what is the road made out of? What's it? Dirt, right? Dirt. And let's see. Do you like to dress up? You do like to dress up. How much would you spend on a gown if you had no problems paying for it? $1,000?
Sure.
Oh, sure. Okay. All right. So you strap on your $1,000 gown. You get over to the towers. You go upstairs so you can socialize and show off your $1,000 gown. But what are you not going to do?
Walk in the mud.
Close.
Walk
Go
in the
swimming?
dirt.
You're not going to cross the street.
They
What's that?
built the crossway?
Right. Basically, all they did was build a crossway that took you from this side of the street to the other side of the street. Because if you wear your $1,000 gown, or you're showing off because you just got in from New York, A, it's dirt, mud. And what's the only form of transportation other than Shanksmere? Other than walking?
Horses.
Horses. And what do horses do as they poop? So you're going to risk that $1,000 gown and those fancy shoes that you bought to go with it crossing over? No, you're not going to do that. All right? But what we find is that there's a lack of organized entertainment. So we're talking now between 1882 and 1886. Whoops. No, we'll stay with the towers for right now. A corporation was formed with prominent residents and visitors, and they named what they were doing, or the corporation, as casa, meaning, anybody Italian? I know I've got an English teacher here, but house or home, all right? And so they named their operation a casino. Now, we tend to think of it as a gambling parlor, but casino or casa was just the house, and this building became the house for everybody that visited. It was designed by McKim, Mead, and White. Those are the big heavy hitters. Its original cost, and I'll go back here. Here it is, right here. All right, so this is the casino, catches up with the towers, walk over, etc. Its original cost was $160,000 for the casino, and I'll talk about what's inside of it in a minute. But since I was a blacksmith at South County Museum, and I still am, the average wage for a blacksmith per day was $2 a day. So that's approximately $630 a year. They spent $160,000 building this casino. Pretty expensive. The arch goes in, the towers, in 1886. It's a 50-foot span, open, no windows. There was a tea garden, however, on the span, so you could get a cup of tea, and it was to be seen or be seen promenade. The casino was managed by Louis Sherry, who was a restaurateur. So let's take a close look at this little rascal. This is what we're talking about here, and we'll talk about this hotel in a minute. But what did the casino offer? Well, there were several dining rooms, both in and out, so you could eat there. There was a ballroom with a balcony, and a stage for orchestras and theatrical performances. They always had no jukeboxes yet, so there always were orchestras playing the popular tunes of the day in the casino or at the casino. There were billiard and pool rooms. There were tennis courts. I have to smile at this next one. There was a gentleman's reading room with daily papers. What happened, ladies? Oh my. There was a bowling alley, right? There was a bowling alley. The alleys down here would be upset. And there was actually a rifle range. Why, I don't know. Now, the problem with doing research for this particular project was there are no photographs at all of anything inside the casino, or I couldn't find them. I found a couple of the tennis courts, but they were so bad that I didn't even want to show those. But it also had shops. There were dry and fancy goods so that you could get your dress there, or you could get another one since you walked across the street. There was a market, there was a greenhouse, there was a florist, antiques and bric-a-brac. There was a bank and a stockbroker's office, all in the casino. Now, you ready for this? Remember, how much a day does a blacksmith make? $2. The subscription or cost or dues to the casino for a season was $15. That's not too bad for a blacksmith if he wanted to. For a month it was $10, for a week $5. It was $1 a day, 50 cents for single admission. So you could pay to go to the casino or get a membership there. A family season, so you could bring all the kids, was $25. So, not bad. Surrounding shops, and this is where the village of Narragansett starts to get developed. There was a druggist, there were groceries, there was a hardware store, 2 fish markets, 2 tailors, a harness maker, a locksmith, a stationer. There was a telegraph exchange. 3 doctors had practices located with offices in the pier. There was a real estate office. There were 4 stables. And at South Pier, where we were a little bit, there were also coal and, let's see, whoops, I shouldn't have turned the page. Sorry about that. There were stables and coal and lumber at South Pier. So those are the businesses that were there. Any questions so far? Yes?
That scene right there.
Yep.
Are we seeing, it looks like the road is above? Is that a boat underneath? I'm having problems understanding what.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is a boat. I'm not used to using it. I just walk up and point. And I just broke it. Yes. In other words, this was sort of hollow underneath. Yes. But it's much the same as it is today with all those rocks that are the breakwaters and then the road that runs its way down to the towers.
So that was water underneath.
Little bit, not a lot. Oh, high tide. I don't know when the photograph was taken. So that's kind of hard for me to say. But anyway, let's go back to the beach. Whoops. All right, what could you do for entertainment if you weren't bowling at the casino, shooting your rifle, playing tennis, or having a meal? Well, you could go to the beach. There was amateur horse racing along the beach at low tide. It was sponsored by the Narragansett Jockey Club. Or you could go see one of the matches on the 3 polo fields that were down at Point Judith Country Club where the road goes in. And what's it called? What's that new housing development called? Polo Club. That's why. That's why. And then a bathing pavilion was finally built. Nothing like it's there now, but it was 2 stories high. It was 370 feet long, so we're running north-south along the beach, which is approximately 1¼ football fields. It was 150 feet deep and 22 feet wide promenade, so it had a 22-foot wide porch where you could stroll with your expensive dress after you left. What did you wear at the beach? All right, we're going to start with the guys. All right, you're smiling. What did you wear to the beach if you were going in?
What did I wear?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wore something that covered my body, I suppose.
How much of your body?
Pretty much of it.
Most of it.
Most of it, but what did you want to show off, you macho guy?
Here.
And you wanted to show off your handsome legs as they tapered down to your cute little tootsies, right? But what color would your suit be? Black, absolutely. Ladies, much the same thing. But the New York Times, in reporting on the Gilded Age in Narragansett, this is right out of the New York Times. Black is the ruling color for bathing costumes this season, with white belts and bathing corsets. So now you know what you should wear under that dress when you go to the beach. Your typical day? Well, you'd stroll the beach maybe from 11:30 to about 1 or 1:30, so you could stroll the beach. And then you'd go back to the casino or back to your house or back to your hotel, and you'd take a bath if you had gone in the salt water while you were there. Or you could promenade on the seawall, and most of us still do promenade on the seawall. You could visit the casino to visit friends, gossip, chat, to the accompaniment of the orchestra that was playing up there. Dances, if you are interested in that. Wednesday and Saturday, there were dances at the casino. Saturday being more popular. Dances for children were Thursday evenings. So they got to bring these kids up right. So we had an opportunity there. And again, the New York Times, they were having a great time with this article. I was glad I found it. Everyone who is anybody is in evidence at the casino's weekend dances. So there you go. All right, now. All right, we're going to catch up with Governor Sprague in a minute. But who's who? Who would come to visit? Well, a lot of prestigious people came to visit William Sprague up at Canonchit and then visited in the hotels, whatever. So this is a long list. I'm going to zip through it. William Vanderbilt, Joseph Harriman, Mr. and Mrs. Lorillard. What did they make? Cigarettes, exactly. Supreme Court justices, admirals of the Navy were there, and generals from the Army, U.S. senators, railroad presidents, President James Garfield, Chester Arthur, President Grover Cleveland were all visitors. The Duke of Marlborough condescended to stop by. And in addition, Consuela Vanderbilt. Now that name should ring a bell. She came across the water. Mrs. William Astor. Mrs. Jefferson Davis and daughter, Winnie. Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Pulitzer. Prince Victor Emmanuel. The Russian ambassador, Comte de Cassini. And England's Lord and Lady Churchill. Those were some of the people who showed up and stayed. Well, what do you do if you've got that much money and you don't want to have to book a hotel for that period of time? As long as you've got the casino, you've got entertainment. So what do? You build a cottage. Oh, excuse me. All right. And this is one of our cottages. But I'll hit a few. To avoid the horse poop in the road, what do you do? As a town, as a village. Got all kinds of rich people running around.
You paved the road?
Very good. Yes.
Yes.
Bingo. You pave the road. All right. So we find that Ocean Road was macadamized, as the word was, in 1882. So now you didn't have to worry about the horse poop. There you go there. So now we have easy access to over 75 cottages that were up and down Ocean Road, along the road. Sweet Capital cigarette investor, Francis Kinney, was down there. Dunn of Dunn and Bradstreet. Fells Naphtha, Jamaica Ginger, Bromo Seltzer, Civil War William Sprague at Canonchit, among others. So there were all kinds of big names that were showing up. Earl's Court, if you're familiar with that, you're shaking your head, and you are too. Where's Earl's Court in Narragansett? You got the scarf on. No.
It's kind of off of Gibson.
And how do you know that you're there?
There's
Tower.
Okay, there's a tower in the middle. But Earl's Court originally was 10 acres with 9 shingle-style residential cottages with the Griffin water tower. Sherry Cottages were on Gibson Avenue, Louis Sherry. McKim, Mead, and White had an enclave with 6 shingle-style, sorry about that, I wrote this too, cottages with the casino, dining room, and center. And most of those are located at the end of South Pier Road. If you take a right, not all the way down to the water, but at the cross, if you take a right and go down, nice grassy, but look to your right, you'll see that there. So what have we got? We've got a place for people to stay, and we've got a place for you to build your own fancy mansion if you want. Sprague, I know more about this one than most of them because he was the original owner of not the original owner, but he was an owner of Canonchit. He had a 65-room mansion built there. There was a telegraph office. There were many outbuildings for animals, cows, horses, and that kind of thing. And he is also the one who facilitated building the bridge that's right across from the beach, Narragansett Beach, the bridge that leads over the little pond that leads up to South County Museum. You with me? Mm-hmm. And a stone stables. So that's what was going on there. 1888, thank you. 1888, most streets and hotels had electric lights. Whoa. The casino had over 400 electric lights. Several hotels in the casino had telephones powered by a small local system. There were 60,000 vessels passing Point Judith. Over half were coastal schooners carrying cargo. And as a result, the stone Narragansett Life-Saving Station, now the Coast Guard House, was built. That's why that's quite the edifice, because the shipping traffic was amazing. Guess what hasn't been built over in Newport yet? The breakers. It hasn't even been built. And all this is going on in Narragansett. I think that's pretty exciting. Anyway, that's Jim Crothers talking. We've talked about this, Earl's Court, the water tower, right? And now we get to the Rockingham Hotel, which is the hotel that we saw when we were standing on the beach looking south. This is sort of standing a little south of the towers. I'm going to use this as an example of one of the hotels because it's the hotel where the fire in Narragansett started. And South County Museum has a photo of the proprietor of the Rockingham. It was originally the McSparran. It was purchased by J.G. Burns and expanded and upgraded. Burns was a Civil War veteran. He was wounded, captured, and released. He rejoined. And at the end of war, he located in the Providence area. So we're talking 1865, 67 in there. But he sees the opportunity. He sees everybody going south down to Narragansett, and he moves to Narragansett. The Rockingham was 5 stories high. It faced the casino, so that made it good. The rear of the building faced the beach, and that's sort of where the gazebo and the post office are. Sort of. Not exactly, but sort of. There were broad piazzas facing the casino and the beach. There were 110 sleeping rooms with electric bells and private bathrooms. Ooh, big deal. It advertised hot and cold seawater baths as well as freshwater baths. There were electric lights and an Otis elevator for baggage transport. So that's the Rockingham. That's what it looked like. It had a telegraph, Western Union Telegraph in it, and there were several shops on the lower level including an automobile dealership. Now, is anybody here an automobile dealer? I would love to know what brand of automobile was there, but I can't find it. Can't find it. So at the Rockingham, you could take your meals at the casino or one of the several Rockingham dining rooms. And here's an irony for you. In their advertising, they talked about 4 modern fire escapes and a fireproof iron roof. Okay. Now, in September of 1900, William McKinley was president. Teddy Roosevelt made a name for himself with his Rough Riders. He'll be the U.S. president in 1901. And in 1901, Narragansett is incorporated as a separate town from South Kingstown. That's it. But on Tuesday, September 12th, 1900, exactly at noontime, there was smoke and fire coming from the iron fire roof. Narragansett, Peacedale, and Wakefield, fire responded, but to no avail. Townspeople did what they could to help with the firemen and save merchandise from the stores, but it literally burned to the ground. High winds from the west, talk about high winds, we should know about those this week, right here in spread the fire from the Rockingham to the casino, and then the Hazard and Burns business blocks. Total devastation. Taken from the beach where we started originally, but you can see the fire at the Rockingham and then moving to the casino.
Do they know what started the fire?
What's that?
Do they know what started?
They do not know. Or in my research, I could not find anybody pointing a finger at a particular cause.
Were there deaths in the fire?
Supposedly, no.
Or at the casino either? What?
No.
Well,
I don't know what happened, but there's nothing reported. So if we look at this, here's the Coast Guard house, and it was really a Coast Guard house. It wasn't a restaurant. Bob Leonard was not there at that time. But you can see the devastation to the towers. There was an article in the Narragansett Times about the fire that also had an ad in it that says, "Will the 2 boys who took Mrs. Newton's trunk from the Rockingham during the fire please return it to her at Mrs. Conway's on Kingstown Road?" But we're closing into the end of the Gilded Age, and I want to introduce you to someone who you probably have never even heard of. But how many of you have watched the Gilded Age on TV? That's all? Ooh, it's worth it. It's worth it, yeah. Joan and I watch it assiduously. Well, anyway, I'd like to introduce you to Edith Briggs. She was the daughter of a local farmer, and she was beautiful, vivacious. Evidently, she had a lovely voice, and she was an excellent dancer. She married Charles D. Smith, who was a cottager. Now, we know what the cottagers are like, right? Spriggs being the biggest one, but he was a cottager and a wealthy New York stockbroker, and they are part of the Pier's 1%. All righty? Mr. Smith has the nerve to die, but Edith inherited a very substantial fortune. So she has Edith Briggs Smith, now a widow, has the capital to invest in, and she does, in many of the businesses and hotels that were along the pier. She puts up the money. She was also a benefactor to her community. There's a real estate record. The broker is not still in business, but there's a real estate record that reveals she bought Great Island in Salt Pond and gave it to the Wakefield Yacht Club. Not bad, huh? But being so good looking and in that whole crowd, Edith catches the eye of a Mr. John Hannan, Hanan. He was divorced, extremely wealthy New York shoe manufacturer. And Edith and John had residences in New York City, Palm Beach, Florida. John Hannan was an avid sailor, and he owned at least 7 yachts, one capable of Atlantic crossing. And they entertained the likes of tea magnates and America's Cup challenger Thomas Lipton at their cottage. The name of their cottage was Shore Acres, and it was located on Ocean Road. Now, I need you to help me do some research. Does anybody know what is currently on 404 Ocean Road? You're heading south. I think it's almost across from the road that cuts up to Point Judith Golf Course. Well, anyway, the reason I'm asking is, and we'll move our way up here, that was her house. Now, it's not humongous, right? But it's fairly good size. And the address was 404 Ocean Road. I think I know where it was, but with a lot of these cottages, they were torn down after the owner died. Well, anyway, wealthy cottages and businessmen, spearheaded by Hannans, commissioned a new casino to be built, and it's located on the site of the Rockingham. But it wasn't as big or as tall. It was designed by McKim, Mead & White, same as the first casino. They broke ground on April 26, 1905, and they opened on July 4th, 1905. So there was a second casino there quite quickly, and think of the grassy lawn that's by the post office and all that. It's sort of extended out into that area there. Well, there was this thing called the Great White Fleet. How many of you know what that refers to? The Great White Fleet?
Whaling?
No, it wasn't whaling.
The Navy?
Sort of the Navy. Well, Teddy Roosevelt, who is now the president, had naval ships, you're right on that mark, painted white. And then he had them cruise the world, showing off United States naval power. All right? They were steel ships and they were coal powered. So when they were underway, what would you see on the horizon before you saw a ship? You'd see the black smoke. Well, Teddy Roosevelt has his ships. He's got them in a piece. And in 1904, Edith invites Rear Admiral Robley Evans, who's the squadron commander, to stop at Narragansett Pier on the fleet's annual cruise up the East Coast. The invite is accepted. And on the 1 p.m. on August 5th, 1905, spectators looking southwards towards Point Judith see smoke on the horizon. Admiral Evans' battleship, the second USS Maine, led the squadron of 8 battleships and auxiliary smaller ships. The fleet anchors in front of the Mathewson Hotel, which is just down the street from the Coast Guard House. And tenders from the ships carry visitors from Narragansett Pier, North Pier, to the battleships for tours of the fleet, so you could go aboard. Oliver Stedman, does that name ring a bell with anybody from the South County? Okay. You're shaking your head, yes, why? Who was he?
Historian. Bicycle shop.
Well, that's the Stedman, but that's not the same thing. He was a historian.
Our neighbor.
Huh?
He was our neighbor. He wrote a series of books.
Right, absolutely, but he didn't run the bicycle shop.
No.
Oh, no, okay. All right, just want to clarify that. Yeah, but he was a well-known South County historian, and he recounts what's going on. Now, if you want to really read some good history of Narragansett and South Kingstown, either go across the street or visit the folks down at Narragansett Library and ask for Oliver Stedman's books. They're really great. But anyway, this is what Oliver says about the White Fleet coming to Narragansett and anchoring offshore. One of the thrills of a lifetime was when my father and I went aboard the battleship Kearsarge while the casino band played national airs during the afternoon. That must have been pretty impressive. That night, dinner is at the Hannon's Shore Acres. We've seen the picture of that, correct? It's right there. And they ordered from local florists 3,000 colors in blue and gold. Do we have any Navy veterans here? Well, blue and gold, the colors of the Navy. Dinner was provided or catered by Sherry's of New York City. There was a Hungarian band brought in from New York City for entertainment. Mrs. Hannon's gown, especially made for the occasion, was resplendent, as they said, with naval insignia. It's now up in the clothing and textile collection at URI. So that's where her gown is. Admirals and officers, anybody who was anybody, were guests. And following the dinner, all went to the new casino, which was on the site of where the Rockingham was. The special Navy ball was hosted by the Casino Board of Governors, and Newport Society even deigned to visit with Pier Society. Stedman summarized the entire visit of the Great White Fleet as Narragansett's finest hour. But I'd like to quote again from the New York Times. There is more fun at Narragansett Pier to the square inch in one day than there is at Newport in a whole season. Thank you. Any questions? I'll try to answer them if you've got questions. No, well, thank you very much. Enjoyed. Thank you. If you want a better look at the photographs, because we'll have to break down, but I've got copies of the pieces that I took pictures of, so you're welcome to come up and take a peek at those. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So those are right up here.
Jen, a quick question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You were talking about the Green Inn,
Yes.
and they had a wonderful oval mahogany or walnut bar,
No, did they really?
which ended up at the old Neptune.
Yep.
And do you happen to know where that is? The bar is, it was a beautiful bar.
No.
No, okay, second question, Shore Acres. At the entrance of that, is that where?
No.
That's not.
There's a, I know exactly what you're talking about, but there's a stone archway on the east side of Ocean Road, but that's not it. It was further down, from what I've been able to garner from police and giving me numbers of houses. Further down, fronted right on the ocean. So that's what it looked like when you drove up, and the ocean was right on the other side.
When was it built? Around 19?
I'm not sure. I am not sure.
It looks very similar to a house built in my town down in Westchester County in New York, which was built about 1900.
That sounds about right. Because the new casino goes in at 5. She's already married, lost a husband, but married another rich one. So that makes sense. That makes sense.
Avenue was 404 Ocean Road, off of Newton Avenue, off of Ocean Road.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's the number.
Yeah, no, I know. I did a search for it, but
Oh, that's the.
some of the driveways
Maybe that's not the same numbering.
are, yeah,
Yeah.
they might have changed the numbers. So, not sure, but anyway.
Did they allow gambling in the, gambling in the second casino, or was it set up like The first.
like the first one, there really was no, except for private card rooms perhaps,
Uh-huh.
but no, wasn't there. Well, thank you very much. Just mine?
I'm just going to access.